Today on Central Illinois on the Record, moving on. A look at the big winners and losers after New Hampshire.
The airports, truck stops, adult entertainment establishments do have a duty to provide that information to victims.
Plus, raising awareness about human trafficking in Illinois. And the future of the Delavan Armory is up in the air. What local, state, and federal lawmakers are saying about the potential closure.
Now, from your local election headquarters, this is Central Illinois on the Record.
Welcome to Central Illinois on the Record. I'm Paul Cicchini. Lawmakers in Springfield greeted President Obama in the capital city last week. Mr. Obama spoke to legislators about bipartisanship, building trust, making a call to compromise. He did so 9 years to the day after he announced his candidacy for president in the capital city. President Obama talked about building a better politics, reaching across the aisle, compromising.
If we can't compromise, by definition, we can't govern ourselves.
Mr. Obama says there are steps lawmakers across the country can take, particularly when it comes to reforming campaign finance.
But amending the Constitution is an extremely challenging and time-consuming process, as it should be. So we're going to have to come up with more immediate ways to reduce the influence of money in politics.
Redistricting.
Today, technology allows parties in power to precision draw constituencies so that the opposition supporters are packed into as few districts as possible. That's why our districts are shaped like earmuffs or spaghetti.
And reducing restrictions to voting.
In 2012 and 2014, the states with the highest voter turnout all had same-day registration. So today I ask every state in America to join us. Reduce these barriers to voting.
The president says it's time to start listening to you, because you know what you're talking about.
They understand the difference between realism and idealism, the difference between responsibility and recklessness. They have the maturity to know what can and cannot be compromised, and to admit the possibility that the other side just might have a point.
In Illinois, voters have been for months calling on lawmakers and the governor to pass a budget.
I think the most interesting thing was when he said it's important to come together for a budget, the entire room stood up for an ovation. There's no doubt the rank and file wants to see this budget impasse get behind us.
The lawmakers we spoke with Wednesday say they're ready to end the gridlock and are calling on leadership to come to the negotiating table.
Typically, you want your leadership to step out there and lead, but maybe we have to step up and we have to lead the leadership at this point, because we can't stay in this place. And I think that the president spoke to some areas today that really speak to exactly why we have to get this done.
Now, we also spoke with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle about whether they think the president's speech will move the needle in Springfield.
I sure hope so. I mean, honestly, I sure hope so. It certainly can't hurt. It's something that I've believed in for a very long time, and he really touched on it. He talked about the poisonous political environment that we have.
As to whether it accomplishes anything, we'll see. You know, sometimes we're all caught up in the emotion of the president coming to speak to the legislature today, but tomorrow will it wear off? I hope not. I hope that the message is that, you know, the people of Illinois deserve better than what they're getting.
This week, Governor Rauner will deliver his 2017 fiscal year budget address. Speaking of budgets, President Obama delivered his 8th and final budget proposal on Tuesday. The spending plan includes a $10 a barrel oil tax for infrastructure and transportation projects, along with money for cancer research and opioid abuse programs. Republicans have already expressed outrage at that oil tax. Experts say the bill is never going to be adopted by Republicans in the House and Senate. President Obama signed an executive order Wednesday aimed at increasing the security of federal government computers and data systems. The move comes after several high-profile attacks at various agencies, including a recent breach at the Department of Justice.
Our Social Security system still runs on a COBOL platform that dates back to the 60s. Our IRS systems are archaic, as with a whole host of other agencies that are consistently collecting data on every American.
President Obama says upgrades will be necessary to secure those systems. The government's top cybersecurity experts say the new plan won't entirely prevent further breaches, but new steps are essential. Well, more money is available for farmers in Illinois. State Treasurer Michael Frerichs made a stop in Peoria last week explaining the state's updated ag program to farmers and bankers. It allows farmers to take loans of up to $400,000 with lower interest rates for 1 year. Long-term loans up to $300,000 are also available for up to 6 years. The Treasurer says having programs like this help protect the state's #1 industry.
As farming becomes more expensive, make sure that they have access to larger amounts of capital and change some of the terms to make it more efficient for them as well.
Qualified expenses include equipment, construction, livestock, and specialty crops. For a list of eligible banks, you can contact the Treasurer's office. Colleges across the state are facing more trouble. The Accrediting Agency for Public Schools says the lack of state funding is putting campuses at risk. The Higher Learning Commission sent a letter to more than 50 public schools asking if any campus may close in the next several months. The schools must explain how they'll ensure students can continue their education elsewhere and receive transcripts. All schools were asked to provide the information by the 18th, including the current cash situation, cuts in faculty and staff, and expectations for fall enrollment. The agency will use the information to determine if the schools can remain accredited. That impacts whether students can get federal financial aid and whether a student's credits would be accepted at another school.
For institutions to qualify for all that federal institutional financial aid, they have to pass muster with both us at the state level and with the Higher Learning Commission as the regional accreditor. If they don't, then they become ineligible for federal dollars.
In a separate letter, the Higher Learning Commission asked the governor and legislative leaders to consider how the budget impasse is affecting students and the future of the state's public higher education system. Well, there's hope for the Illinois State Museum to reopen, but it will come with a cost. The Department of Natural Resources says it reached an agreement with the governor to reopen the doors if admission is charged. The museum closed in October and has since laid off about 15 workers. Now, in order for this to work, lawmakers have to approve it. The museum will also try to raise money through a partnership with the Museum Society. Governor Rauner's office says this initiative will save about $1 million a year. A time frame for reopening does depend on when the bill is called to the floor. Now, the director of the Department of Natural Resources says there may be some backlash to charging admission, but it's a cost that will bring an educational tool back to the state.
There will be probably in some cases, but on the other side, we still have the ability to provide free entry for seniors and for school children, especially on field trips. So, those are things that need to be worked out in the future.
Since its opening, the museum has always been free. Leaders call a special meeting to save the Delavan Armory. After nearly 80 years, the building could be on the chopping block. CIOTR's Eugene Daniel reports federal, state, and local leaders talked behind closed doors with hopes of solidifying the Armory's status. But this could be an uphill battle.
What has been a pillar for the Delavan community could no longer come 2017. The federal government is breaking up the 1144th Transportation Battalion, which calls this home. And when the troops leave, so will the federal money to keep the place going.
This is in the heart of our city, and to lose this facility, the soldiers who are here twice a month, it would be devastating.
Mayor Liz Skinner joined several federal and state leaders to tour the Delavan Armory on Monday and discuss ways to help. For now, any future plans are on hold.
The plan right now is to get back together when we have a better idea of the force structure coming from the federal government, and that would be between June and August.
Federal cuts and the consequent military restructuring are the roots of the shakeup and parts of a statewide complaint. Cuts mean fewer military units, plus the government allows only a certain number of units in Illinois. So despite being one of the best states in military recruiting, Illinois recruits are going elsewhere. Units like the 1144th are getting the axe, and officials say Illinois is left without the representation it deserves.
We clearly have not over the years, and there's a variety of reasons for that, but I think there's a renewed emphasis to make Illinois, to get us the numbers that we need and deserve in this state.
The group will push for additional soldiers into the state and deploying them to Delavan. All 40 members of the 1144th are for sure on the way out, but the Guard hopes the Armory could host a new unit.
If manna dropped from heaven in the shape of new force structure, and it fit this particular facility, absolutely.
In order for another unit to fill the space, the Armory would most likely need at least $4.5 million in renovations.
Now, the Armory was built back in 1938. Another meeting will take place in Delavan sometime this summer. The 1144th Transportation Battalion will remain in place until at least September 2017. Still ahead, shutting down hotspots for human trafficking, how businesses are joining the fight. But first, fallout after New Hampshire. What's next in the race for the White House? A setback to President Obama's efforts to stop climate change. The Supreme Court has temporarily blocked the Obama administration's plan to limit greenhouse gas emissions from power plants. Under the EPA's Clean Power Plan, states would be required to meet specific carbon emission reduction standards based on their energy consumption. The plan's been criticized by Republicans who call it unlawful. More than 24 states filed a federal lawsuit to challenge the Clean Power Plan. A federal appeals court will hold a hearing on that suit in June. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie suspends his presidential bid. The move comes after Christie's disappointing sixth place finish in New Hampshire's primary on Tuesday. He won just 7% of the vote, and the former Hewlett-Packard CEO, Carly Fiorina, announced on Facebook Wednesday she's ending her White House bid. Fiorina says she'll continue to fight for those Americans who refuse to settle for things the way they are. She finished 7th in New Hampshire. Well, the first primary in the nation delivered a pair of anti-establishment winners, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. On the GOP side, John Kasich surged to second place. And as Scott McLean reports, for the Democrats, Hillary Clinton suffered a tough loss.
Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders will head to Nevada and South Carolina with momentum on their side, both steamrolling their opponents in New Hampshire, just as polls had predicted.
We are going to start winning again, and we're going to win so much, you are going to be so happy.
What began last week in Iowa, what voters here in New Hampshire confirmed tonight, is nothing short of the beginning of a political revolution.
With the establishment candidates splitting votes, New Hampshire did little to define a unified establishment answer to Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. Ohio Governor John Kasich turned heads with a strong second-place finish, while Senator Marco Rubio finished in 5th. The focus for Republicans now shifts to South Carolina. Jeb Bush will be using his family's star power, confirming his brother, former President George W. Bush, will join him on the trail, though the former governor making clear he's not part of the D.C. establishment.
But I'm on the side of people that are really struggling right now, and I think over the long haul, and this is the long haul process, we'll continue to move up.
Hillary Clinton is shaking off a tough defeat, well aware of the demographics she needs to win over.
I know I have some work to do, particularly with young people, but I will repeat again what I have said this week. Even if they are not supporting me now, I support them.
Exit polls suggest the vast majority of younger voters chose Sanders.
Still ahead, a look back at last night's Republican debate and what Democrats had to say last week as they squared off before Nevada. Still to come, the thinning Republican field fights for votes, what they had to say before facing voters in South Carolina. But first, so-called human trafficking hotspots are being targeted by the state. How a new law is forcing businesses to raise awareness.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
A new law is bringing light to human trafficking, a crime many people may not realize is in their own backyard. Supporters of the measure say the state could save lives. As CIOTR Shane Gustafson explains, it makes sure businesses defined as hotspots are making people aware of the situation.
Oftentimes, victims of human trafficking are isolated.
Sarah Delfield works with people in dangerous situations. Now a new law is aimed at helping them feel empowered rather than alone.
The airports, truck stops, adult entertainment establishments do have a duty to provide that information to victims.
Information that could save lives. As of January 1st, businesses like liquor stores have to post signs in their buildings, bringing the dark crime to light. Those signs have a phone number to the human trafficking hotline.
We're in a unique position here in Central Illinois and in our geographical area to have lots of intersecting interstates.
That's why airports and rest stops are also on the list of places the signs are going up. Dilfield tells me Peoria is often an interchange to get victims to Chicago. And even though it's not required by the law, the Center for Prevention of Abuse hopes places like the airport will step up their training to look for extra warning signs.
We're not able to help a victim of human trafficking unless we're able to recognize the signs.
That's already the case for Big Al's in Peoria. They couldn't talk on camera, but workers tell me they go through extra steps to ensure safety for all of their employees.
For victims to know that there are resources out there that can provide help, but it's also important to educate the community on what human trafficking is.
In Peoria, Shane Gustafson, WMBD News.
Businesses have until June to get the signs posted. They'll be printed in English, Spanish, and another language commonly spoken in the area. Any business that doesn't post the sign could face a $500 penalty. Several groups in Central Illinois are joining the fight to end violence against women. The fight is called 1 Billion Rising, a global activism campaign to educate everyone to the problem that is present in every culture of the world. Locally, Children's Home and Aid, McLean County YMCA, and the Neville House are all raising awareness. They'll kick off this year's efforts next Wednesday at noon at the YWCA in Bloomington. Fighting the spread of Zika virus, how the president and top doctors are fighting back. But up next, Republicans looking to gather support before South Carolina. A look at what happened when they took the debate stage on Saturday.
You're watching Central Illinois on the Record.
The field of Republican presidential candidates that's continuing to thin met on stage last night in Greenville, South Carolina. The 6 men left standing look to sway undecided voters as they consider who to support.
A change in tone Saturday night as the remaining Republican presidential candidates took the debate stage in Greenville, South Carolina. Following a moment of silence for the late Justice Scalia, the candidates were asked how they would go about selecting his replacement.
And so I believe the president should not move forward, and I think that we ought to let the next president of the United States decide who is going to run that Supreme Court with a vote by the people of the United States of America.
We need to put people on the bench that understand that the Constitution is not a living and breathing document. It is to be interpreted as originally meant.
I think it's up to Mitch McConnell and everybody else to stop it. It's called delay, delay, delay.
The debate then turned to foreign policy and the Bush administration's handling of the war in Iraq. And that's when things got personal.
We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
While Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did.
How did he keep us safe when the World Trade Center came down? The World, I lost hundreds of friends. The World Trade Center came down during the rain. He kept us safe. That's not safe.
The World Trade Center came down because Bill Clinton didn't kill Osama bin Laden when he had the chance to kill him.
Ohio Governor John Kasich perhaps summing up the debate best.
I got to tell you, this is just crazy, huh? This is just nuts, okay?
I'm Melissa Rainey reporting.
February 20th, Republicans will vote in South Carolina's primary. Peoria's Congenital Heart Center gets a visit from a local congressman. To recognize Congenital Heart Defect Awareness Week, Representative Darren LaHood made a stop in Peoria at the OSF Congenital Heart Center. The Children's Services CEO says the hospital wants to know more about state and nationwide initiatives and needs more funding to find a cure.
The science and the art of medicine is not a local beast. It is something that really transcends a region and certainly transcends a hospital and an organization.
Peoria's Heart Center is the only congenital heart center outside of Chicago. Still to come, the Zika virus continues its spread, how the nation's top doctors hope to curb the epidemic. And Democrats debate. Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders speak to voters in Nevada before they caucus next weekend. Hillary Clinton is looking to rebound from a crushing defeat in New Hampshire 1 week before Democrats caucus in Nevada. But as she and Bernie Sanders took the stage in Milwaukee, the Democratic Socialist from Vermont was looking to keep the momentum going.
Hillary Clinton takes a page out of Bernie Sanders' playbook.
We both agree that we have to get unaccountable money out of our political system and that we have to do much more to ensure that Wall Street never wrecks Main Street again.
But she tried to dent Sanders by portraying his plans on health care as unrealistic.
That's a promise that cannot be kept.
Sanders made sure to check his rival.
Well, Secretary Clinton, you're not in the White House yet.
And called Clinton out on her stump speeches.
Secretary Clinton has been going around the country saying Bernie Sanders wants to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. I have fought my entire life to make sure that health care is a right for all people. We're not going to dismantle anything.
Clinton turned to discrimination as a way to appeal to a much-needed base, Latino, African American, and women voters.
I'm running for president to knock down all the barriers that are holding Americans back.
As both candidates look toward the Nevada primary, Sanders attempted to keep his young base with his debate performance while also courting the elderly vote.
If elected president, I will do everything I can to expand Social Security benefit, not just for seniors, but for disabled veterans as well.
I'm Mary Maloney reporting.
Democrats in Nevada will caucus on February 20th. Well, as Zika virus continues its spread, the nation's top doctors and researchers are working on a vaccine. But according to one of the nation's top doctors, the answer is a few years away.
We have already started to develop a vaccine in the early stages, and we can predict that we likely would be in phase 1 trial just to determine if it's safe and if it induces a good response, probably by the end of the summer, and get that going by the end of this year. And if it looks like it's safe, we'll go to the next stage.
The Zika virus is transmitted by mosquitoes and is tied to birth abnormalities in newborns. It has spread to at least 29 countries. President Obama is asking Congress for $1.8 billion to help fight the virus. Former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod, will be the speaker at Eureka College's May commencement. Axelrod is the founding director of the nonpartisan Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago. He's worked in politics for 40 years, is a CNN analyst, and was a columnist for the Chicago Tribune. The graduation will be May 14th at the school's Convocation Center. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Central Illinois on the Record. Of course, you can stay in touch with us using social media. Connect with WMBD and me on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag CIOTR. We will see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of WMBD, WIZZ, or Nexstar Broadcasting Group.